person, and also along with that, ascertain a quorum for us to meet and to transact. Can we do a roll call? Make sure we have documented who's here and for the purposes.
Mr. Addison, Mr. Byerly,
Here.
Chair Holland,
Here.
Ms. O'Bannon, here, Mr. Peterson.
I do. That's
We
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
quorum.
We
You
do
have
have
a
a quorum.
quorum.
Absolutely. Outstanding. All right. Any introductions need to be done? Martha, anyone do we need to introduce? Thank you for
I
being
think
here.
we know everybody, but we'll just call out staff, obviously.
Please do.
I'm Martha Heater.
Dan Van Dornick.
Dan, okay.
Diane Fiscal.
Okay.
Gilbert.
Gilbert, okay.
And
Gilbert
says helping with the technology.
Okay, good.
And
good.
of course, Eric,
Gilbert.
you all know Eric.
Yeah, great. Thank you all.
Mr. Holland, Katie Chalmers, our project manager, and Michael Gaza, who joined her last time on the meeting, they will be joining us virtually. They're
Okay.
coming from another meeting, so I
Okay.
tried to arrange the agenda in such a way that when they join, we'll be able to go through that, but depending on the flow of things, I know you are in a time constraint today.
Yeah,
if I'm
well,
not
I'm
mistaken.
okay. I'm
Okay,
okay today.
so-
I'm not constrained.
So I can be backup for them if they don't join in time, but we are
Okay.
expecting them to join us
Great.
virtually.
Great, we hope they can. All right, wonderful then. With that thought in mind, let's look at administrative items regarding minutes. Are we prepared to discuss and approve the minutes, or do we need more time to review them and read them?
Well, I haven't seen them.
Okay. Okay, now, good. From what I'm seeing are the minutes of the 13th, which seems makes sense to me, it seems reasonable, and meetings from the 22nd, 11 a.m. Okay, we met there. To approve space layout design, present and motion passed unanimously. All the motions were unanimously passed. Okay. If anyone's prepared to offer a motion, or I'm glad to carry the motion request.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. It's been moved and I'll second since I was here too. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimously passed. Minutes of 22nd and 13 respectively. Next item, the financial statements for fiscal year 22, third quarter. Mr. Dornick. Or Martha, who would like to do that?
Dan, why don't you take that
I'll do that.
back here?
Okay, if you would, financial statements,
So if you turn to your package to page 8,
page 8, okay. All right, page 8, we're there.
you will see the balance sheet compared on the governmental fund basis. Nothing terribly different or new, but just to reemphasize, the cash position is still very strong.
Great.
After 9 months. And the receivable versus accrued revenue.
Mhm.
You can see that we're accruing revenue, but we're not getting anything hung up in the accounts receivable. So that flow of accruing our revenue, billing, and then it turning into cash, that cycle is working
Excellent,
in
excellent,
a timely basis.
excellent.
So moving over to the
Any questions on
loss
the balance
summary.
sheet before we go forward? Any questions on the balance sheet? One thing I would ask is in terms of cash and cash equivalents, how about investments, any interest? I know we talked a year or two ago about having a treasurer's report, cash flow regarding that. So that'll be something to be interesting to look at later. You may not have to do it now. You can go ahead now, but later on, if you would, that'll be something I'd be interested in knowing. Investments and treasurer's report.
I can
cash
speak to it
flow.
right now if you.
Go, please do it if you would. Then we'll move on to the income statement.
715,000 is invested in the
Okay.
LGIP account.
Okay. All right, good. Okay.
I guess, Mr. Holland, now that we've, I'll say, stabilized for the last 2 or so
Wonderful.
years with the fund balance,
Great.
over the 1 million,
Mhm.
it might be worthwhile for the committee to consider what our liquid needs are, for cash flow of operating, and then if there's a more lucrative investment opportunity for, the LGIP is nice because we can move funds back and forth fairly easily.
Okay,
But of course, as you know, the returns on that are less.
less than what we could do
And
otherwise.
so I think we might be in a position in the coming fiscal year to think about other, allowable options. But as you know, we don't have that many options, but,
Okay,
Given the stability of operations, there might be a layer of cash that you can actually invest with term.
yeah, I think it would be prudent to do that with cash and get a better return. I think there's an opportunity. In a year of a lot of change, with moving and other expenses that we may encounter that we're not aware of, it's probably really important for us to have a hand on cash flow and maybe a real good cash flow analysis, cash position. And that'd be something to have like a sort of a treasurer's report. Each time we start discussing that from here on out and look at investment opportunities. One thing I would point you to is Chesterfield Treasurer, Rebecca. I mandated, and we do have a monthly treasurer's report, and we earn a significant amount of money off our funds. We have a lot of invested, and so they aggressively look at that, and we make millions off our money in the county. So something I would advise you to look at, and it's online too. Just pull out a treasurer report, print a copy, and go for it. Right. If you like, I can bring one too.
You just said $700 and some thousand invested. Where is it reflected in that report? I mean, I'm just.
Yes, of that 871,000
That would be
in total cash and cash equivalents.
you would get that in a treasurer's report, and not in the balance sheet. It's not gonna be on the balance
Has to
sheet.
be on the balance sheet.
No, it's not gonna be there. Well, that's why I'm talking about a treasurer's report, something
Where
to
is-
show
where
that,
is
highlight
that?
that. Well, we don't have one here right now, but we're gonna have one. We're gonna have one. It's
Okay.
coming. Thank you.
we work with Rebecca Longacre on the CBTA, so I'm
Good.
familiar with her
She's good.
report thing, and we could definitely
Yeah.
get in contact with her.
Yeah, get her, talk to her and get that information. That'll be a big help, a guide as we move forward. And maybe ask her any recommendations. One thing I think we're gonna want to know is how many months of cash we need to maintain, whether 6 months or whatever, to pay ongoing current expenses, current debt. That's one thing we wanted to establish, and hopefully we can have that ascertained, since we have $1 million, not like 40 million or whatever. I think there's opportunity of balance we can strike and invest those funds and maybe put them in a higher earning CD.
I would
Okay.
agree. I think, understanding the cash layers,
Yes,
especially as there's large fluctuations throughout the year.
correct.
So even if you're doing 90-day notes.
That's
like
right.
that, but you also have a layer that could go even beyond the year.
Yeah, we could look at some that potentially could be 6 months or a year. You're right.
And
And that's,
that's also understanding your fund balance
yes,
in that same way. What is an optimum fund balance for this
Yes.
organization to maintain?
yeah, because right now we have 1.4 million, $1.5 million unassigned fund balance.
Because it
1.4
was,
million.
the point of the fund balance was if we disband,
Right.
then you have to.
Have to
So
liquidate.
if part of that is the amount of money it would take to pay off whatever the contract is for the rent.
Mhm.
So maybe our new place is gonna be different or be more, I don't know.
It could be.
I just don't,
We might want to look at that too.
might have to check what it should be.
Exactly.
And I think when we get to the budget section, you'll see
Okay.
that the analysis is getting
Okay.
sophisticated.
Good,
To
good.
the
We like
point
that.
where
Glad to hear that.
those are the next steps.
Well, great.
in
We're
growing
moving there. We're
financial
moving there. Good.
place.
And in the future, we're gonna have that cash, the treasury report where we do see the invested funds and the returns, projected returns and interest income. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
So-
Income statement.
Income statement, page 9 is the
P&L.
summary, and highlight that the format changed just a little bit in order to make it a little more readable. The first
Okay.
two columns are quarters, so 3 months.
Okay, I got you. Good.
And then you have the
I like
current
that.
quarter,
Mhm.
third quarter, and then you have the year-to-date.
Year to date. So year to date income is what?
113,000,
Okay, good.
and that is,
Wow.
if you see that third quarter, each of those months, 38,000, 26,000, 40,000, a very strong quarter as far as a surplus.
Yeah, we've come a long way from last year. What is it, quarter 23 to quarter 2 and quarter 1, 25,000 is negative 17, $18,000. We come a long way, haven't we?
Yes, but part of that is just the annual fluctuation.
Annual, yeah. That's true.
You know, the first quarter of the year is the most productive
Right.
portion of the year.
Cash flow wise.
With employee time.
Oh,
is-
okay.
Is where I'm going with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you
Mm-hmm.
look over to page
Mm-hmm.
11,
Okay.
and near the top, you see 6101 leave wages.
Yeah, yeah. I see 61.
That's kind of the barometer for how much time is being productive versus how much time employees are spending away. So leave wages would include holidays, vacation, and sick.
Mhm.
So if you follow that line, March had only $4,000 worth of leave.
I'm missing 6101. I see 6102.
I've highlighted it here on the screen, you can kind of see it.
Oh, there it
Just
is.
in that
Okay.
first block of expenses.
Okay. Can you
You
see
might-
that yet?
The numbers are hard to see, I know in the number, but that might
Yes,
give you a sense of
let's
where it is
see
on the
here.
page.
The number ordering isn't.
Okay, yeah,
What you would
I'm
want.
challenged anyway seeing.
But you see in the first quarter,
Yeah.
it was 39,000, then we jump way up to 81,000.
Gotcha.
That, of course, is November and December, which is
Leave
40%, 45% of your
Right.
holidays. And then people take vacation on top of that,
That
so.
makes sense.
And then you jump into the third quarter, and you see even for the quarter, it's just 30,000. So it's even less than
Gotcha.
July, August, September,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really fueled in March. People were here, people were working and billing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, one of the key drivers is what are people doing? Where's the time? You can see it in those micro sections of month by month versus their vacation, other time off.
Mm-hmm.
In the budget,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be another, point of emphasis there.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of the detail on the financial statement, unless there are any questions, that was really the item I wanted to highlight, was that it was, a very productive quarter, very productive month
Yeah, it is.
of March.
Yeah.
And that, falls directly to the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't any unusual expenditures
Good.
in this period to alter things.
No significant deviations in experience budget, that sort of thing, did I?
Right.
I can see. Okay, good deal. Yeah. It'll be helpful too to sort of footnote some things like you just mentioned, that, we may forget or someone may not know. If you could like footnote maybe 1, 2, and then highlight that toward the, total like 105,000, what is it year to date?
You'll
Just
include
a-
that in the written narrative for the board report, right?
Okay, for the board report, it'd be nice to sort of have little footnotes like that, it'd be great. The board members can, all right, thank you, if you would. Any other comments or questions, suggestions?
No.
Okay, go right ahead. Are you done?
I was done unless there were questions.
Okay, good. We like that, no questions. I'll tell you one thing, we sure are a lot better than we used to be. Okay, you say that? Amen on that one, huh? Okay, that's good now. Thank you, Mark.
Great.
Okay,
Ready to
thanks,
move on?
Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, well, I just wanted to give a couple of administrative updates.
Yes, please.
We do have the RFP that was approved. You might remember this last spring, and then we reviewed it in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
We issued that RFP, and so the proposals for audit, financial
I remember.
compliance audit are due tomorrow.
Oh, my goodness.
So I will be sharing the results of that with
Great.
members of the committee, and
Great.
that'll be slated to be part of one of our upcoming meetings to do that selection process.
Yeah.
I'll just share, we did put it out through the eVirginia procurement
Good.
site, and then we also did some, I'll say direct submit the RFP to 6 or 7 firms.
Okay.
So many of those are firms that we know are active in the space of local, regional government organizations.
Mhm.
So we got word back from one of the firms that we are too small for their
Exactly.
interests. So
Mhm.
that is something that we have had challenges in before, but Eric and I have talked about this a couple times, and we are, wanting to make it clear and known that we are very interested in seeking proposals and, interested in making sure that our rotation of audit services are occurring on a regular basis. So
Great.
that will be coming, and I'll be
Good.
updating you on that.
Good.
We also have a position solicitation out for the Director of Finance position. That was one of the positions that was approved last year. Mr. Van Dornick has been our Contract Finance
Yep.
Director. So I've been working with Matt Harris on this, so he helped me kind of review prior position descriptions. You all might recall that he and Chesterfield County at large kind of adopted us as their, I don't know what you call that, adopted mentor or organization. So we've been working on that. So we issued the position announcement as well as an RFP for financial management. Whoops, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. As well as financial management. Sorry, I don't know why it stopped sharing. Financial management and administration services. So we'll be able to give you all a summary of candidates, but also a summary of proposals and kind of be able to compare the two to see what might be the best fit for the agency. So news on that will be forthcoming. Wanted to also just update you that we've been doing some work internally. Dan alluded to this, and I'll let you speak a bit more to this on the budget model, but we've been working on continuous improvements to the internal system. So Diane has been leading the charge in automating a lot with our HR function. So that has been, I think, a really big opportunity for us. And then most recently, we've been exploring different products for timekeeping. So as you know, the staff members here fill out a timesheet where they record the time spent by project, and that's what we use to serve as the basis of our billing to the various grant funders. We have an in-house product right now, an Access database that you all have heard about before that has been problematic at times. And so we have, through a pretty extensive evaluation process, made the decision to go with a product offered through Paychecks that integrates with QuickBooks, which is really great. It also has, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, an integration with the Bamboo HR platform that we use. So we'll have systems that actually talk to each other now, as opposed to kind of manual maneuvering that Diane does. And then that'll enable us to also consolidate our payroll services. Currently we use ADP, and so the idea would be that we would migrate those payroll services to Paychecks to be able to have kind of more unified system there. So that is really in the proof of concept phase right now, I guess, and we'll be kicking off that migration in May and June with full deployment in July, if I'm not mistaken. So we're excited. I know it sounds kind of boring, but it's very exciting for us. And I think a real opportunity to be able to gain some efficiencies. So, and data integrity and that kind of thing. So those are a couple of updates. Dan, I thought I'd turn it over to you just to give a little bit of background about the budget model. And if we don't see Katie and Michael join Mr. Holland, we might want to skip from 5 to item 6 and dive into the budget.
I got you. Fine.
That's okay.
Okay, gotcha. Any questions, first of all, on that?
Do we need an action on item 3?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we do.
I apologize. Yeah, thank you.
I apologize too. Yeah, we did skip right over that. May I have a motion to accept the financial statements as presented?
So moved.
It's been moved and properly second, thank you. It's been moved and properly second that we accept the financial statements through third quarter fiscal year 2022.
Recommend approval.
And recommend approval to the full commission. All those in favor, sign of aye. Ayes have it. With the understanding and recommendation too that the footnotes and that sort of thing on explaining the financial positions and things like time and everything. The footnote on that, Mr. Dan. Okay, thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. So moving down to what would we next? Again, what you said, skip over.
I wanted to ask Dan to talk about the budget model.
Okay, that's what it was.
If
But
that's okay.
before we get there, let me ask, are there any questions on administrative items update in terms of financial administration, management, financial system update, or audit, RFP? Any questions on that? No. The one thing I would be concerned with is make sure whoever we have, they have some experience dealing with PDCs. In terms of the audit RFP, it's always good when you have experience in that particular niche. So I want to make sure that's important. And of course, we're looking forward to the recommendations on that. And also on the financial management, we talked about working with Crater as being part of that.
Yes, and we did, and I should have updated you all.
What are they?
You may know this, Mr. Holland, but there is a change evolving with the executive leadership
Correct.
there.
I'm
And
aware of
so I think that that opportunity could still exist, but we wanted to be able to give the
Wait.
space for the whatever decisions the board makes about their new executive leadership. So Mr. Bruckner, my colleague, has taken a position at another planning district commission. So Crater will be, I presume, going
Pursuing.
through some kind of a search process this summer. So I think Alex's last day is the middle of May.
Mhm.
And then they'll be going through the process to deal with that vacancy. So we thought it might be wise to put
Wait
that
and see.
opportunity on hold. But certainly if through our recruitment efforts, we can circle back around, and there might still be that opportunity to do the cost sharing.
Okay, thanks for that update, that point, that's very important. In terms of financial system update, I know we talked about the new accounting systems and things but the integration in all is critically important with regard to the time system and also payment systems, make sure that we're as much integrated as possible. I think, and I know Diane's working on getting that done, but, and so if there's anything in that area that we, need to be aware of, let us know on the inside, on that scope. And then, okay, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, there's been significant improvement over the year in that area. We are still in QuickBooks.
That's
I know
right.
we had talked about going to a full suite accounting system.
Mm-hmm.
We decided not to make that move because we had enough
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for advancement and improvement within the systems we already had.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of my philosophy, and a lot of people say, get as good as you can with what you have and know what you want before you try to buy into something else that's a significant investment. And so in order to even define what you need to define what you need. You need to have a really good understanding of what your financial structures are, what your information needs are. And so that's where the emphasis on, getting QuickBooks working as well as we could, getting our billing and grant integration working as well as we could. And then, the big albatross is time. This organization runs on time.
Yes.
Professional time. So how do you plan for it, budget it, monitor it, record it? How do you then integrate into your regular accounting system, let alone into the rest of your information system? There was a very significant, gap in, those couple of jumps. And then the other part was that the database that was in place has been around for a while, and so there's, a little bit of, weight to it. It's not as agile as what you would want, and so you want to make sure that it's your core information piece. It's not your financial system, but it's your subsidiary system that very much supports all of your finances. So you need to make sure that the data integrity and safety is of utmost importance. And that's where the move to a paycheck system.
Yeah.
It's a system that's fully supported by, a nationally, internationally recognized company. So all of their internal controls and data safety would apply to it. And it also integrates. So one major piece of the information puzzle is being satisfied with that part of the job. And then once we look at the budget, you'll be able to see a couple of other structural things as we, understand and define, the relationship between all the time and the different types of grants we have here, different types of funding sources with the public sources, and how best to tie those together in an integrated system. So I think what we did this year wasn't define what we needed in a new system. I think we defined maybe a little bit more philosophically, but then also put into the models kind of what the structure is. And then you can build from that and actually start to go to vendors if that's what you feel that you need to do.
There's one thing I want to mention that sometimes gets lost. The PDC is state, and it's state required, state funding. The TPO, are you doing the TPO too? Because that's federal. You talked about how to track it or how to report it from the different sources.
Yeah, the TPO is a subset of the entire PlanRVA. And so that's
But it's
distinct
really
within.
totally separate, though. It's actually supposed to be totally separate.
We're
And-
the fiscal agent, so Dan will be able to walk through, it's integrated into our financial statements and into the budget, but it's itemized separately so that we can track it according to those
Yeah, and
requirements.
that's what I mean about tracking it at the federal level.
Yeah, so each of those, the federal part of the grant, the state part of the grant, and the local part of the grant are identified in the system. Each of the costs that are assigned to those pieces are assigned in the system.
Well, that's been a problem in the past.
Yeah.
For some reason, the funding would get put together and it had to be reported out to the federal government about where the money went.
Yeah, that was part of the improvements, and when we get into the budget, you'll kind of maybe be able to see it a little bit better.
Okay, other comments or questions?
That was-
How about accounts payable? How are we gonna be doing with accounts payable? And one area of big concern for me would be us understanding internal controls, and that we know how they work, and that we can actually look at the controls and make sure, ascertain that they're working well.
Mhm.
That would be critically important.
Right, the entire purchasing,
Signatures on,
Yeah,
On
signature
warrants.
cards and payments and disbursements, warrant,
Yeah.
trip payments and all. Yeah, that'll be an important piece of payment history
Yeah.
for the accounts payable section, function of this.
that entire purchasing cycle is one of the things that's kind of the next step project.
Okay,
Understanding something all the way from budget through procurement, through
Procurement.
approvals, and including like purchase ordering,
Purchase
some of
orders,
those
okay.
types of things, where we get the entire continuity of approvals,
Okay.
but also the entire continuity of where it fits in the budget, where it fits in each grant, and
yeah,
all of those types of
right,
integrated elements.
okay.
So now that we have, the structure in place of how all the grants fit together,
Mhm,
and then the related expenditures that is signed up into them,
mhm.
then the activity then, the primary one obviously is personnel. So personnel knowing where
Just a biggie.
that
budget
activity
move.
gets coded to. The other things are contracts,
Mhm.
what falls in an indirect allocation bucket as overhead. What
Right.
can actually go straight to a contract as part of that grant.
Mhm.
And we had that distinction.
Yeah, well, that was critical important a couple of years ago. And also in accounts payable, making sure we pay the bills timely, that on time, we don't have late payments and incurring penalties or thereof. So very, very important.
Right, everything actually is, when
Thank
you
you.
look at the balance sheet, it's no more than a 30-day.
Okay, all right, good deal, all right. Anything else? Anything else? Any other comments? Okay, on the updates, good. Now, regarding the new budget, then we're looking at the new budget, which would be item 6, but 23 budget presentation. 5-6, if you will. Yeah, 5-6,
So Dan and I are going to
Okay.
co-present this,
okay.
so
Okay.
that you can,
Presentation.
I'll give more overview and he'll be able to dive into the detail. But if this looks familiar to you, it's a similar format to the presentation that we gave last year. I always like to kind of go over a little bit where we are in the process and our approach. So this is an accelerated process for us this year insofar as because we have that joint annual meeting with the TPO and the CBTA in June,
Yes,
we are working to present the budget to the full commission in May. Typically, the finance committee has 2 months to look at the budget, so Mr. Holland, if you do want to schedule another session of the finance committee prior to May 12th, we're prepared to work with you on that. But we would schedule to have this budget go before the board on the May 12th meeting.
May 12th meeting, so that's next month.
Yes, just 2 weeks away,
Okay.
so.
Any concerns? Y'all okay?
is this what we're talking about?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
talking about this, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, and first item, for the 101, is certainly MPO for the 101. MPO.
So, yeah, just wanted to kind of hit the highlights of our confirmed revenues that are included in the budget. So we do get the figures from VDOT and DRPT pretty early in the planning process. So we've received and have confirmed the available revenue for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and that's our federal and state shares of the PL dollars. That's money that passes from Federal Highway Administration to VDOT.
Mhm.
And then the 5303 money is money that passes from federal transit to DRPT to us. We also have confirmation insofar as carryover dollars from our coastal program. That's a program that runs from October 1 of each year. It operates on a federal fiscal year, so it's October 1 of each year to September 30th of the next. So we have those carryover figures that would carry over essentially from June 30th to September 30th. And then similarly with our emergency management, that's the SHSP funding. Those are carryover dollars. So those cycles do not have a fixed time frame. They tend to float, and so those dollars will carry over to next fall as well. And then, of course, all of the jurisdictions have been going through the local budgeting process, and so we have had no indication from any of the jurisdictions that the requests that we submitted will be reduced.
Okay.
So we are operating under, full funding at the 55 cents per capita based on the 2020 populations and 5 cents per capita for the TPO special assessment. As you know, the CVTA support, that MOU negotiation is underway. The CVTA is scheduled to approve their budget after public hearing on Friday of this week, and then I'm hoping to be able to get the draft MOU before our board, or rather the executive committee, and then back to the CVTA over the next couple of months. So Virginia Housing, that was a grant that's awarded for 3 years, so that that is known. And then we have Capital Region Collaborative residual funding that's been sitting on our balance sheet as a deferred revenue source, so we've programmed that in this year as well.
Virginia Housing, which line item is that now?
That
I see two,
is-
three, grant and then capacity.
So it's 4440. That's the partners, so that would be the money that we would pass through to nonprofit partners. And then 4441, the Regional
Okay.
Housing Grant PlanRVA. That is the fee that we get to collect for managing that program.
Okay, that's $675,000.
So that's a pass-through.
Pass through, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, why do we have version 1 and version 2?
We'll walk through that in a minute. Let me,
Okay, all
sort of
right,
go
no
through
problem.
kind of the background and
Yeah, go
then,
ahead, finish as you need to, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Jump
So
ahead.
we do still have some grant applications that have yet to be submitted and approved. So
Okay.
this budget does not reflect grants that we haven't yet submitted for. The application for our emergency management program is June 13th. So those grant applications will be forthcoming, and then we would incorporate that into the budget. Historically, the lion's share of those grants are pass-through. So there's some offset to our operating, so there would be some adjustments that would need to be made if we were awarded those grants. But again, they're not incorporated in here. We try not to count any chickens before they hatch. We also have a letter of request into the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation for support in transitioning the market value analysis project over to PlanRVA. And while I feel pretty certain that we have factored that request into the budget, it's not been confirmed yet. So just wanted to let you know. And then I think Dan will speak to this a little bit, and I'll circle back around. But this new tool that we have really helps us to be able to identify new opportunities within our budget of where we really need to target grant applications. So we'll speak to that a little bit later. So I'll direct your attention to the screen. Just as kind of an overview, 2 weeks ago in the executive committee meeting, we talked with the executive committee about the approach for this year's budget. And so the figures that you see before you in version 2, the column labeled version 2 on the budget, do incorporate a salary increase pool of 5.9%. That's consistent with what the Social Security Administration has reported as of January as the cost of living increase. And that Dan will be able to speak to this, I think, more directly, but the cost of that 5.9% pool is $109,653. Mr. Byerly, that was one of the questions I know finance or the executive committee had asked a couple weeks ago. We've also incorporated a merit increase pool. The idea with that would be that would be awarded based on high performance, but it would be awarded in the form of a one-time payment, so more like a bonus.
Oh, bonus type.
And the cost of that, including FICA, the taxes associated with that, would be $21,530. The approach that we have in this proposal is that would be held to be awarded at the midpoint of the year, so that we can see that the budget is holding up before we would release those awards. So again, the salary increase, the 5.9, we're proposing that would be effective July 1, with that first payroll first covered payroll of the fiscal year, but then the merit increase pool would be held until the midpoint of the year. The table here on the slide shows you a little bit of a comparison of the projections, and this just pulls some numbers from the handouts that you have onto a table to give you a sense of the total salaries and wages projected as of year end for this year is 1.5 million. For next fiscal year, it would be 1.95 million. That represents 24 persons for this current fiscal year, 25 for next. And Dan, help me here, but it's a little bit misleading because not all of those 24 persons were on staff for the entirety of the fiscal year. So that's why you see, that lag. One person isn't making up the $394,000 delta.
Okay.
And then similarly, we were approved for those part-time positions last year, and we are planning through the use of interns, and I'll speak to this in a moment, but we did talk with the executive committee as well about I think a kind of exciting approach to helping our smaller jurisdictions with technical assistance and capacity. And so we want to pilot a program that's incorporated into this budget as well.
Good. I like that. That's a good idea.
So I'll take a pause there, and maybe Dan, you
Yeah.
want to sort of walk through the first couple parts of budget and how that salary increase relates to revenue.
Yeah, just before you go there, have us make sure we have a page or a section that outlines the positions that we had, maybe a comparison to last year, like
Sure.
the number of positions, full-time, part-time, and have that sort of work so we can see that along with it,
Okay.
if you would, okay?
So Dan, maybe, orient them, the committee members, to the document itself, and then if you wouldn't mind speaking to the salary increase and the revenue offsets.
Okay, so fiscal '23, I'm working off the one that's called the fiscal '23 budget statement. It has the columns.
Oh, budget statements, okay. Okay.
With the fiscal '23 version 1
Okay,
and version
gotcha.
2. It also has fiscal '22 original and proposed,
Okay.
and then the change.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mark this very well as I'm reading it now, but the change is actually between fiscal '23 version 2 and fiscal '22 proposed.
Okay, I see, version 2 and
And
proposed,
why I did that, fiscal
Okay.
'22 original, that's what was passed a year ago.
okay,
That was the original budget for
correct.
fiscal '22. Proposed is actually the revised budget that we put through the model to test the model. And this is kind of where we're estimating that fiscal '22 will actually finish. So that's looking at 9-month results, looking at the model, the position changes that have occurred. The vacancies, and then also the lags with hiring. So that's the difference between those two. Now, the important part between fiscal '23, version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is kind of the base model. If you would extend where we are right now, going out of '22, out into '23, that's what version 1 is. So no raise, no bonus pool, and then a couple of
flat
others
budget.
were in place. Right.
Yeah.
Version 2 has two important differences.
Okay.
One is the COLA increase
Yep,
and bonus pool.
okay,
And then the second one is a very specific effort to maximize all of the funding sources, especially the reimbursable grants. So actually going through with a better eye towards staff time allocation, including looking at what activities could fall under more than one grant or funding source and getting them aligned. So really digging into the fundamentals of your funding streams and assigning costs accordingly. You'll see as we get down that is actually a very important financial benefit to be in that specific and in that level of detail.
Which one was that? I'm sorry. I didn't catch
That's part of version 2. So 2 changes in version 2 is the COLA and the optimization of grant revenue. So you see the account structure is very familiar, and the revenues on page 1. If you flip to page 2,
Mhm.
at the top, you have total revenue.
Right.
And, we're targeting 4.8 million in revenue. The expense structure is what's changing from what you've been seeing in monthly reports. We're putting salaries and wages first in the 5,000 series. You can see how it's allocated there, including detail for holiday, annual, sick,
Mhm.
but more importantly, just, you have your total salaries, that's what everybody's being paid.
Okay.
And then you take what their production is, and that gets allocated out. So almost all of the wages paid are allocated to an activity, whether it's time off, whether it's to actually the administration of the organization, but more importantly to, program. The fringe benefit pool, that just falls out from your staffing. But you'll see on the page, top of page 3, you'll see 2 lines, the second and third, 5598 and 5599. Fringe benefits billed, fringe benefits applied. Every year with the activity that's assigned to each grant, each program, you also add a premium for fringe benefits. And that's a percentage of the wages that are applied. And that rate is calculated through the audit. You'll see 2 footnotes in your audit regarding it.
Mhm.
And right now, it's actually getting audited and verified through VDOT. So it's becoming a very formal official rate.
Mhm.
But that's the account through which we actually push that out and record it. The difference between fringe benefits billed and fringe benefits applied. Billed means it's going to a grant that actually bills out. So you
Okay.
actually get reimbursed on it. Applied means it's going to an activity that doesn't get billed. So you still want to keep track of it as if it did, but for my purposes, I know I don't get that money back. So that's part of the optimizing these grants and
Okay.
knowing what the true cost of each program is.
Right. Okay.
You'll see under the 7,000 series with indirect, at the very bottom, you'll see the exact same 2 type of accounts, and that's on the indirect cost. So you'll see how much actually gets reimbursed. We'll get down there later.
Okay.
But in the middle here, on page 3, you see a 6,000 series,
Okay.
direct cost pool. Those are costs that are being assigned directly to the grant.
Mhm.
So there's no allocation involved whatsoever. So it's not part of your overhead. It's not something that has to get allocated out. It's something that actually qualifies directly under the grant. So that's part of the improvement in
Mhm.
maximizing reimbursement on those types of expenditures.
Mhm.
My understanding is that, this year and last year showed a lot more improvement in that precision.
Mhm.
And it also helps manage your grants. You're not leaving some of those lines empty
Mhm.
in the grants that you have. And you'll see that the actual change between 22 and 23 is proposed at $250,000. And all of that flows through and follows through, the budget model, staying within grant budgets, all of that. And then the 7,000 series, starting at the bottom of page 3,
Mhm.
basically reorders some of the numbering and regroups some of the activities.
Mhm.
So you see a professional fees group, which includes anything from bank and lawyers and contract accountants
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
your different types of advertising from, even recognizing the difference between public notices
Mhm.
and, some of those marketing endeavors.
Yeah. I see you're breaking down between recurring and non-recurring consultants there. Okay. I see the breakdown there. Okay.
So, and just to be transparent, recurring, that's actually your auditor.
Yeah, because we have to pay them every year.
Exactly.
That's
It
right.
has to be there. Non-recurring is actually my position.
Okay,
What
gotcha.
my role is.
Yeah, we're glad you're staying though.
And,
For a while at least. Okay, as long as you can. Okay, good. Go ahead.
so there's
Mhm.
a placeholder. There is a full-time finance director in your personnel budget
So that's budgeted.
as a full-time position, so
Okay.
the entire year. So this is basically an $18,000 overlap of that position or additional services.
Mhm.
So whatever that needs to be. So there is some transition acknowledged.
Okay, great.
And then at the very bottom of page 4, you'll see the indirect costs, how they get billed and applied.
That's good.
You know, rows full of zeros aren't the most fascinating rows on a financial report, but when we get to the next report, they populate and they become interesting. So, and then page 5, you have non-operating activities. So that will become your capital and non-allocable budget. And then ultimately a transfer between lines of businesses. When we flip to the next statement, you'll see that more closely as to what that means.
So the hope is that the budget that the operating budget that we're presenting for consideration on May 12th is that version 2. But Dan, I think, aptly put together this set of comparisons so that that wasn't sitting kind of in isolation of everything else. But the budget, that column for budget for version 2 is the proposed budget.
And so you got budgeted income at 0, 0. So you're matching your expenses to your revenue in version 2. So we're gonna have projected income for next year. Is that what we're saying?
That's what we're saying.
And what we're saying they'll be allocated to, would it be allocated to the unfunded? Unassigned, yeah, thank you, unassigned.
So the operating budget for 23 would not need to draw on that unassigned, and at this point it would not contribute to. But if you remember, it's also including a 5.9% COLA increase.
That's right, yeah, correct. Yeah.
With some full-time positions that weren't there. So you're actually absorbing a COLA in a very difficult year.
Yeah.
For both employees and the people paying it. You know, so you're rewarding your employees. But you're also getting capacity, which we'll talk about in a minute. That'll become part of what Martha emphasizes when we look at some of the different lines of businesses you have.
Okay.
You actually have the capacity out of your data and GIS program. You know, which I think is actually important to know, is that you're actually absorbing all of that within your operating funding. So you're not investing out of your general fund, you're not investing out of your fund balance to get that capacity.
Okay.
You have it, and there's enough in operations to help you, stay level there.
Okay. Comments or questions? How about our move? How the budget for our move? We'll be moving next year too. How's our move? And that's budgeted and considered.
It's considered in the 7200 series.
7200.
Top of page 4. You can't really see the distinction.
Yeah.
You can see the increase.
Okay. All right.
But
the original budget for the move was based on the comparison of the tenant improvement allowance of $734,000 to the estimated cost of the total move at $992,000. So at your next meeting, you will see more refinement on that so that we can populate with more realistic numbers for construction, of course, design that we've committed to contracts, the information, the moving quotes and furniture. So we're still at the beginning phases of collecting the actual quotes to round those numbers.
Gotcha.
But as Dan and I were going through the numbers again today, I think we're still working to try to make sure that we remain within the delta, if you will, of the tenant improvements to the total cost. That original budget for the move was relying on a $250,000 transfer from the fund balance to cover the difference. And so that's what we're holding, that's what I'm holding myself accountable to you.
Understandable.
To hold, we just have to make sure that as the line items get populated, we make adjustments as we go.
I got you. Okay.
So that's not shown in the handout that Dan just went through.
Okay.
The idea is that once we have some more firm information, that would be populated in that last section, right?
that's correct. That'll be part of the 8,000, kind of the capital.
Okay. Any other questions?
Now, when you said the 7200 series is the move, it just says rent and insurance brand. Is there something specific in here that breaks it down?
I think that's part of what Martha just said, is that I have the rent
Okay,
estimated there,
but that doesn't.
but as far as all the move and everything else associated with it, that's part of the refinement that Martha.
Okay, so it's not in
Refine
here.
that.
And yeah, and we wanna make sure that those are separated because the costs associated with the move are not allocable. So they cannot be calculated as part of that indirect cost
Indirect cost,
allocation.
yeah.
And so they have to be kept separate from our schedule of estimated expenses and revenues.
Correct.
So they almost fall, as Dan was saying, kind of like below the bottom line, if you will, on that last page, in the non-allocable expenses category,
Okay,
or
got you.
capital, right,
I got you.
essentially.
Yeah, I call it non-operating as part of those two groups.
Mhm.
You know, so it could be whatever your capital investment in furniture
Right.
and fixtures,
Yeah.
or in, you know,
Moving
Yeah,
storage.
non-operating.
investment in just
Yeah.
getting to a different space.
Yeah, I think that's good, that's good.
But what's preserved up top is
Mhm.
your annual ongoing operating requirement.
Exactly, for operations. Yeah, and training is okay, we considering training, we're all set with training. And also, hopefully we're able to take advantage of, when we look at the training under direct costs, and then we got training under, where is it?
Indirect as well.
Indirect as well, you have training on indirect as well, yeah. Okay, which is 7430, I say, line item. All right, good.
And the difference between those two things is, again, the 6,000, it goes straight to the grant.
Right, I
It
got
doesn't
you.
have to be supported by the organization at large.
Got
It's
you.
supported by the grant
Okay.
itself.
Okay, and we're able to take advantage too, Martha, of Chesterfield University and their training classes they have.
We have a course scheduled, for May, right, Gilbreth? What day is that? I forgot.
Chesterfield
Yeah,
would be the 26th.
26th, May 26th. We're
May
doing
26th.
we have our first scheduled class on Office 365.
Okay, wonderful.
We're really excited about it.
That's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Good, good. May 26th. I could use training myself. I used to try to train with our auditors and accountants, our internal audit department, get my CPs when I can. Okay, great, that's good.
So-
Glad to hear that. Yes,
I have a question.
yes, sir. Mr. Bowers.
Oh, that's my phone, it's a bad storm coming.
Okay.
Apparently, and yeah.
Your voice changed.
Yeah, you changed a little bit.
I get these if there's a bad storm, they said there was gonna be lightning and thunder.
Okay.
Oh, heavens.
That's good.
CBTA
Severe
reimbursement,
Yes,
thunderstorm.
good
Yes.
question.
69,000 decrease. Why is that?
You need to take that one or you want to?
The one below it too, CBTA service fee. I mean, both of them, looks like a 10% number.
Yeah.
So that is because the CBTA, and I should have mentioned this in my part, so apologize. The CBTA has initiated a recruitment process for an executive director. That position, because it's not core to our operations, is not included in the numbers that I shared with you. So we will need to come back through and update this once that person is selected and that salary is confirmed. And that will increase our overall salary and wages line and then the associated benefits. But right now, it's been excluded. We didn't want to confuse, since that is a pretty high
Right.
figure, confuse that with our core operating. So the service fee that you mentioned on, I think you're talking about at 4315.
Yeah,
the
15
revenue.
and 16.
Yeah, so it's being reduced on 4315 by 70,000 because the idea is that executive director will be coming on, thereby replacing time that
You
Chet, myself, other staff members would have been spending and billing to the CBTA. So we will be billing less, essentially. We will still be providing support, but it will be billed the executive director through, but that's kind of immaterial to the comparison of last year because it wasn't a cost that we had. And then our staff time spent to support the CBTA will reduce. And then the same for the service fee. I'll start this and then you can finish it. We negotiated last year a 10% service fee on top of what we bill. So we're able to basically bill at cost plus to be able to absorb other capacity improvements and things like that that we needed to do associated with taking on that work. And so that is a, I don't know, proportionate reduction as well. As you notice, it's about, well, it's 10% of what that reimbursement. Did I say that correctly? Okay.
Yeah. If you look at the change, one is 10% of the other.
Right, I got it.
Which is
You
that
got it
service fee.
available.
Now, when the executive director position is filled, when the actual agreement between PlanRVA and COTA is, finalized in detail, that'll change some of this. But, strictly to answer your question, the 70,000 decrease is because activity is going to be decreased.
Right.
So as a core example, I think if I'm not mistaken, there are 0 hours for Martha Heater proposed in this budget billed to CBTA, whereas this past
Once
fiscal year,
they
there were probably
hire their
500.
executive director.
That's right, yeah. So we've assumed that executive director will be on staff July 1.
1st, yeah, exactly.
That's certainly, as you know,
Right.
subject to what happens over the next couple of months. So, I mean, some of that will be adjusted subject to what happens with that position. And I should note too, especially for you, Mr. Byerly, the executive committee will need to take up an agenda item in May to amend our pay and classification schedule to include another pay band to accommodate for that position. So that's coming on the agenda. But again, the salaries here that are showing in this expense category 5,100, they do not include the CBTA executive director right now, but they will need to.
The 1.9 million doesn't include that.
That's right.
Okay.
Good question. Sorry, I didn't
Thank
say
you.
that earlier.
Excellent.
Yeah,
All right,
if-
any other questions?
Thank you.
If that defers into the fiscal
Right.
year, anytime that is spent, that's not budgeted, actually gets reimbursed at 110%.
Which is nice for us.
Yeah, it's a
So
good little package.
We don't have any other 110%.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
that's something we set up, make sure we get paid.
Yeah.
So the
Not
risk is
work-
covered.
We don't want, we're not working for free.
It's gonna be compensated.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Very good. Any other
Do you want to
questions?
do the other statement?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that would be really nice to go over the line of business. Is that right?
The line of business budgets,
Yeah, we're looking at, line of business.
that's the other set.
Yeah.
You'll see the headers have administration, community development, et cetera. Basically, we went through the organization and just identified what kind of the essential services are.
I see
And
it.
came up with those. The lion's share of the dollars rolled through transportation.
Gotcha.
That column includes, there are actually 2 layers below what we're showing, but that transportation shows the MPO and the CVTA. The MPO is broken down into 13 of its own different categories. So you're seeing what the organization does in the transportation area. You also have environment, emergency management, where there's significant grants, significant staff time. And you get to see where basically, which line of business are quote profitable, which ones are the harder, drag on the organization at large. And page 1, you'll see the various revenues. They're the exact same accounts that you see on the other statement, but now you see them in their actual, business purpose, including where PlanRVA, kind of the general operations, the administration, where they get its funding, which is state appropriation, local membership dues. And then there are a couple of, flow-through items with project partner revenue. And on point to our chair's comment about interest income. You can actually earn some income there. The very last line on page 1 is called revenue distribution. That answers the question of local matches. Many of our grants require a match from the local entity to fund the operation. For example, MPO, those grants, it's 80% federal, 10% state, and then 10% from a local source. So you'll see, that's why that money goes over there. That's why 182,000 is shown as revenue from transportation column. 93,000 in environment. That's to meet all those requirements that the grants are requiring you to match. And what that costs the organization is 276,000. So in total, it's 0. But it's just showing, kind of where does the general fund revenues go? And what is the requirement of those matches? 10% doesn't always sound that big. But, between it and the TPO assessment, you see that a little bit about 53,000. Those two items make up the match for the MPO program. And I know when I was first being educated, when I first came here, knew that 53,000 was to satisfy the match for this program. Well, it satisfies 23% of the match for the program. So it's, not up to what the program really needs, for the match. So that's, kind of one of the items in Martha's checklist of things to, at least educate people, that match doesn't really satisfy the need. So that's one of the benefits that we're seeing here. Environment is also a program that, there's a fairly, decent weight. Some of those programs are 50-50. So turning the page. At the top, you see the 5,100 salary section. All the activity is in the administration section, except for where wages are allocated across the way. Part-time is only allocated out to transportation. There's a specific employee and then a couple of intern slots that are part-time that help support that program. But you can kind of see where the dollar value is of activity, how that flows out of our total payroll out into those areas. And then you see how it's allocated down, what the burden of the organization has as far as its general oversight and all of its time off. Just to note that administrative line, that's primarily the executive director and finance director position, some other things, but where there's opportunity for those positions to specifically assign their time to a program. Martha, that's relatively simpler. She actually spends time in those programs developing those products. But like Diane, finance director position, that might just be, billing the grant or reconciling, different things like that. So it's much less.
Producing the financials for the MPO, those kinds of things, yeah.
So, we're even trying to be that detailed in what we're assigning to, the general fund and the burden of the whole organization versus what's going out to the grants.
Good. I like the specificity.
So same idea at the bottom of the 5,500 group, fringe benefits billed. So we actually, the way that the numbers work this year, the burden of fringe benefits on administration, it's actually a negative 41,000 because we're actually able to allocate out to the grants more than what we're actually experiencing. And that's due to that rate that gets determined every year. But you're taking fiscal 21's rate applies to fiscal 23. So you have a 2-year lag.
I get you.
But the other part of that equation is 72,000 that's being billed, applied out, actually isn't getting reimbursed by bill. So it's kind of going out and then in the bottom line, it's going to come back. But that helps me keep track of, what actually is getting reimbursed, what's actually creating dollars to support that area. The bottom of that area, 6,000, you'll see where all those expenses that we talked about getting assigned directly to grants, that's where they're tucking in with those programs. Obviously, the MPO is the lion's share of that. But emergency management, that 222,000, that's the nature of a couple of the grants where a lot of the activities actually contracted out to consultants. And the 675,000 in community development, that's a dollar for dollar revenue versus expense for the community partners that are executing the program. And then page 3 is all, the indirect costs what some would call the burden on administration, on PlanRVA. Then at the very bottom, you see how it's allocated, again, through time spent by personnel, and then a premium of percentage is how that comes back. So those are that's a very important part of the structure of this organization, is getting its burden actually allocated to those grants and then getting proper reimbursement from those grants,
Right.
so that it actually turns into cash in the organization's support.
Yeah.
Then the very last page, you see that non-operating activities, you don't see anything in that capital and non-allocable. That's, pending, the development of the budget. That would be a burden on administration. But then you see that 9,000 series transfers to or from lines of business. That's basically the bottom line of all your lines of businesses will come to zero, because it costs, the administration $300,000 to support them. The one place where it doesn't work that way is the transportation, and you'll see that 12,000 is actually the CBTA admin fee.
Okay.
So that actually comes back to the support of the entire organization. So in some of this line of businesses, you have some allocations that go out to your activities, but they don't actually get reimbursed. So they come back. So there's a little bit of that. But for the most part, if you see any allocation under that build line, that's how much that's actually getting funded to the organization by those grants, so it's not just a person's time and their salary. It's that time plus that fringe plus that indirect, where it's actually a little bit over 100% of the wage that also gets applied out there. And that rate gets changed every year based on actual experience. So making sure that you have very good control over what expenses get assigned to a grant and an activity versus what's on your general influences all of that, very significantly, actually. And a lot of the activity of the last 2 years, this year especially, has been to get more precise, so that each of those buckets, each of those groups are truer and truer. And then we can actually monitor that as the year goes on to see if we're plus, minus, and what that'll affect next year's rate. So that's where a lot of this information is a lot of accounting detail, a lot of words, a lot of numbers, but it's getting into those key drivers of, what is the financial sustainability of the organization? It's getting your people, but getting your people to do the things that go into reimbursable spaces and places.
Assigning costs to where it is, yeah. Absolutely. A critical piece going forward, you're right. Now, a big portion of what we do is transportation. We say $2.9 million, which should be no surprise here. Yes. All right, great. Any other questions, comments?
But the other part of this,
Be good going over it.
Okay, great. Good deal. Good job. Good work. Good detail today.
Yeah.
you see some opportunity in, data research, emergency
Okay.
management, and environment. Those require significant subsidy by the organization at large.
I'm sure they do.
So it shows what opportunities you have in those areas.
That's right. That's right. Great deal. And I like the idea too, you mentioned earlier about the pilot program for small jurisdictions too. It's be
Yes.
nice to see what we serve, how we serve them as well.
Yeah, so if I could just briefly,
Yeah,
so that
you can,
concept is that this summer we would pursue partnership again with the Wilder program at VCU
Yes.
to be able to select a Wilder fellow if it's a good fit. And we would pilot this to be a staff member that's dedicated to supporting the small and rural jurisdictions. So they would be a complement to our existing program staff, reaching out and saying, hey, this opportunity is coming along, or this activity is happening, can I help make sure that you're keeping up to date with what's happening and that kind of thing. What we find is that the small jurisdictions have small staff. And so, they literally, I don't think can be at the office doing the work that's happening for the county and here at the regional table. And so this person can be that bridge. And our hope is that if it's successful at the conclusion of that Wilder Fellowship program, we would be able to evaluate whether we're ready to scale up to a full-time
Sure.
position. So executive committee talked about this, and I think
We did.
it was quite
Yeah.
favorably
It was very
received.
positive,
Yeah.
very positive.
I can see that. I support it. It's great.
Huge benefit.
All right, excellent. No questions. May I have a motion for recommendation to the full commission, May 12th?
So moved.
And to clarify, version 2.
Version 2,
Version
that's
two.
correct. Version 2, yeah, thank you
Okay.
for saying that, Mark. It's moving properly second. No additional discussion. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, that's approved. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the specificity. Thank you very much for that. All right, what's next? Next item, Martha, is
Yes.
new office space and relocation update.
Yeah, so Katie is here. Katie, can you hear us? Katie? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks for being patient with us. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah. So, Katie, if it's okay with you, I think we'll just turn it right over to you. I can share my screen to have the schematics. The committee members also have printed copies of the schematic drawings that Sam sent over last week in front of them at their tables.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. And just as background, this is the completion of schematic design / design development phase. So really Baskerville wants to receive any final comments on the drawings, and then they move into the next phase, which is construction documents. So I think this is similar to our last meeting where we will have some amendments to this, but in general, I'll be able to speak to some of the changes that we will ask them about, or we have some questions back to them. But in general, this is kind of the plan moving forward and how we'll keep going into CDs. So this is the finished plan, and Martha and the team have seen rough ideas of the finishes that Baskerville has proposed. And we've also provided comments back to Baskerville about, or we're going to, about keeping concrete floor in certain areas. And we're just evaluating the carpet they've selected to make sure it's within our budget, which they said it is. They did show us some other carpets, but we confirmed with them that we'll be able to stay within our budget by selecting different carpets that are very similar.
We do have the carpet
And Martha, feel free
color
to.
samples over on the back table over here if you're interested in looking at them.
It's blue, is that blue?
Yeah, so the gray on the screen, like you can see the majority of that brick pattern that's gray, that would be gray. Then we have not purple, we're going with the blue to be a little bit more neutral. Those splashes of blue and kind of a gray and blue, and then we have in those darker areas the accent points where they've integrated those stripes of the blue carpet tiles coming out to be able to color that.
I have a question on where the boardroom is. There's some rectangles up and down there. What are they?
Yeah, so the vertical,
Yeah.
that's the gray carpet. So they would be in kind of a carpet tile.
Like here, there's some rectangles here and up there. What are they?
The lighter shaded, the medium colored shaded gray would be the hybrid of the gray with the blue kind of splashes through it.
No, I mean, both of them show these rectangles in the boardroom. And one is carpet and one is not carpet. I'm just saying, why are there rectangles?
They're both carpet. I think it's just a different color, right?
So this, it's like they're tiles. So they would be laid kind of like you see the design there
Yeah.
in the gray. Then this is the light color. And then we would have these perpendicular, I guess shaded like that, perpendicular of the darkest going across it. So it's like the pattern that they're trying to draw with those. So that's why they've got like the horizontal and the vertical directions.
So on this one, where it's showing the electrical, what are those rectangles in there?
Those, I think those are columns, if I'm not mistaken,
Well, that's
Katie.
why I was wondering up here, they're the same columns, right?
Yes,
That's
I
what
believe
they're
so, Katie,
called.
like on the right-hand side of the conference room going down the north wall.
That's the board.
It's a circle and then a square and then a square.
Yes,
Well,
those are the
Yeah,
columns.
those are columns.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was misunderstanding what you were
The-
saying.
The rectangular ones on the top and the bottom that run down the right-hand side, those are
Yeah.
the carpet squares.
carpet squares. Okay.
Carpet blocks.
Mhm.
And they're just depicted on the lower schematic, just for illustrative purposes, right?
but the others are columns. That was what I thought, maybe they might have been columns, but they're not. The large rectangles are not columns.
You are right,
All right,
yeah,
that was what I was asking.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, so as
That's-
Katie said, I mean, there's still pricing to make sure that the carpeting stays within budget, but this is the general sense that open ante area would be the exposed concrete floor. We've got the exposed concrete floor also in the supply room area. It's marked as A7 on that first set of plans. So that's that 4C, the top part of that first diagram, that's the flooring plan. Then 4A, that is the floor plan, so you can get a little bit of a feel of the build out of the actual walls and framing. Am I saying that right, Katie?
Yes, and actually, the most important part of the process to approve are the wall locations, which we've talked about a lot, and we don't have any changes to them. So, but this is kind of that, what you're showing here is the wall plan.
I know this isn't it, but and maybe it was done last time, but we are reusing the audio equipment
Yes,
and everything.
so the, so the
That's
vendor
okay.
that installed this has already given us a quote to be able to take
Take it out and
everything
move it
out
back.
and move it and reinstall it, so that's, yeah.
That's me.
Okay.
So this is one thing that Mr. Peterson and I guess it's somewhat related to power, but Mr. Peterson, since he wasn't able to be here today, he did shoot me an email this morning saying that he did have some concerns about the layout shown on the boardroom. So if you wanna
Is that the next
just skip to
page?
that,
Yeah.
let's see, where's a good image of that?
Ceiling.
I guess on the power, well, the furniture plan, I guess, would be the best one. So,
Yeah, what was he concerned?
on page 3, you guys have that here. You can see on the digital plans, the boardroom, we've got the orientation that you walk into the boardroom along the side, the south wall, the auditorium style seating. There's a proposal for a monitor to be displayed. So if you think about this room, for example, with the audience here, the
Right.
monitor would be there on that wall for the audience members to be able to see what you have on the screen.
Oh, wow.
Good. That's
And
good.
then, yeah, it's like a big display. And then
great.
these units would remain so that they would be able to be moved around to position inside of the U shape of the meeting. And then our thought is, and we haven't spec'd the size or the mounting position, but the thought is that on that east wall, which would be kind of that wall, there would also be display monitors up there. So if we were to use the room for more of a classroom style, there would be, monitors that people would direct their attention to. But the plan is to continue to use these mobile rolling units, because these have frankly worked quite well to be able to give greater visibility
Yeah, they
for
can
board members in the meetings.
Yeah,
The
good.
the
Yeah, 'cause
cards
if
and
you're
everything
sitting
have been
there,
very
you can't
nice.
really read the screen.
Yeah, and you're in the middle.
Yeah, the distance is really hard, I think, to see
You just
something so far
Can't see
away.
it.
Yeah, it is.
And you're
So-
leaning forward with every move.
Yes, yeah, so our hope is that multiple positions, if you will, of monitors will improve that experience. And on the power plan, we made sure to not have these long cords and that power track there.
Yeah, that
We'd
was
be
the
able to
other
plug into the
question.
floor, so we would avoid that kind of tripping hazard and that kind of thing. But so that was something that Mr. Peterson had asked about today, that he wanted to make sure that the monitors were positioned in places that people would be able to see
And the
everything.
only other concern that I recall that was voiced was that when you first walk in, you see the food or kitchen area, and the problem, it's gonna have to be kept so clean or whatever.
Yes.
That was sort of a
Yeah.
comment that's been made.
Yeah, so our main entrance is there, where the sort of receiving area is that kitchen area, and so that would enable board members, as you can imagine now, when we're in executive session, for example, at the
Yeah.
executive committee, everyone's just kind of stacking up in the kitchen. So this would be a bit of a nicer sort of reception area. You could grab a cup of coffee, you'd be able to sit at a couch or at the counter and do networking or that kind of a thing. Now, I would also say, I think we're imagining that our executive committee for the TPO and for the commission will actually be meeting in conference room 2. So board members will be able to just go directly into the full conference room as opposed to having to wait outside right now. So we will be able to accommodate more of that networking time before the 9 o'clock meeting, as opposed to now it's just sort of awkward, to say the least.
Yeah. Good.
But yes, there is going to be a need for our staff to make sure that kitchen receiving area is kept tidy. The good news is the meetings are in the morning, so it gives us a little opportunity to make a mess before the meetings start. But I think our staff members are pretty comfortable with that.
Okay, other concerns?
So we're looking for the committee to give concurrence on the plans, because as Katie said, this is a pretty critical step to be able to move forward. If there's something
Right.
that we need to address, we want to make sure that we do that now, because as we move farther down the
Okay.
process, we're doing changes, and that makes everything more costly.
I can imagine. I think that's important too. I'm glad you spoke with Mr. Peterson and make sure that they are informed along the way as well, since they're not here physically. So I think that's very important, very important. Any other concerns or questions? I think we do need a motion on the, is it new office space? Yeah, we do need a motion on the full plan, finishing and reflected ceiling plans.
Well,
Do we need a motion on that?
if they're gonna maintain the cost, I mean. you said
Within budget.
Within budget.
Yes,
That's the only.
it's a big concern.
So right now, Katie's estimates show that original cost, as I mentioned before, of $642,000. These schematic drawings, there is a change of $15,000, so it goes from 642 to 657.
For the whole thing? I mean,
The
just
construction.
The construction part.
Yes. The design costs are higher than budget, so when you all approved that last time, our intention is to make up those differences in furniture and the other expense line items. So we just
Okay.
we have less money to deal with those other activities as we go forward.
So I'm assuming when you said like these tables and these chairs, that's the kind of thing that will move.
We want to replace these tables. We would like to be able to purchase new tables that have greater flexibility for movement. It takes 2 people to move every single one of these tables, and it's a pretty difficult process to reconfigure the room. So we would like to be able to get the easier to move, rolling, flip up tables that can be, nested and stored for different layouts and that kind of a thing. So that's part of that, the budget for the furniture. But we are planning to take existing furniture for back of house. So staff who are sitting in enclosed offices, they've been moved to out years of priority for new desk systems and that kind of thing.
Does this show a location for storing the tables?
Yes, good
If
question.
you need to move them all out or most of them out?
Yes.
You see they're on rollers. Is it way down the hall? Is it all the way down the hall?
No, it's adjacent to the boardroom.
Usually that's what
So,
you do.
Let me zoom in here.
Is that storage room? Is that where?
Yes, so that would be our room for storage where we'd
Well,
be
I
able
thought that
to,
was the meeting room. For the executive committee, you said.
so, yeah, so between the stairwell and the boardroom, there's a storage
I
area
see
there
now, yeah.
that will be, and we've actually got 2 entrances. One for staff to be able to access the AV cabinet, and then
Yeah.
the double door entrance that we can move furniture in and out on dollies from that storage room to be able to outfit the room as needed.
Okay, now I see it now. Where is the one where the executive committee would meet? I thought that's what that was.
On this drawing, do you see like the red box here on the monitor that has those 2 arrows? That's conference room 2.
That's
I don't know why it's labeled that, but that's what it's labeled on the plans.
all right.
So that would be where I would imagine those smaller committee, this committee even would be able to meet in there instead of having to sit in the large room.
All right.
And each of those rooms will be outfitted with, you know, the technology still to be able to do the live streaming that we did.
Okay. All right, other concerns and questions?
So I think there was a request for a motion on the
Yes.
approval of the floor and floor finish and reflected ceiling plans.
That's correct. I have a motion for that, item 5A. 5A,
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
thank you.
Approve the floor finish,
Floor finish.
reflective ceiling plans.
Yes, sir. Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Any additional discussion on the 5A line item?
Is there anything that says within the budget?
Well, we mentioned that
motion.
within budget, we're gonna work
Okay.
toward keeping it within budget.
Within.
And this is an ongoing commitment, I think we as a committee need to make, is that we look at, if there are overruns as mentioned, cost increases from what we did, that we'll look at other areas where we can make that up and keep within the budget. Or hopefully less than if possible. So it's been, you're right, thank you for that point.
That's all.
It's been moved and properly second, to continue to focus on being within budget. All those in favor, sign of aye. Ayes have it, it's unanimously approved by the committee. Thank you, 5A. How about 5B? Schematic design review, power
So
plan.
the power is here, shown on the monitor.
Okay.
Again, you know, we've gone through this with, our internal team led by Mark Bittner, with, the design team. Katie, I think you've even done the conference calls with our, managed services and the audio visual. So I mean, I feel like we've pretty well vetted these needs, but this is another pretty critical component. Katie, do you think it's beneficial to kind of walk through the core drilling? Because I guess that's one of the bigger elements of this.
Would you ask, is it beneficial to what?
Just point out the core drilling and what that means and how that fits into this. That's kind of the more significant piece of this, I think.
Yeah, well, and you know what, we've really only selected the boardroom for the core drills, and then, of course, the back of house area for the future workstations. And based on the furniture plan, we will relook at these and make sure the quantity's still right. But I think if anything, we've added extra, and we may be able to remove some core drills.
So again, the
That would
idea
be the
is that there would
goal.
be outlets in the floor
In the
that these
floor.
monitors can plug into, or a staff, you know, somebody could plug their laptop into,
Yeah,
as opposed to having to run these cabling.
exactly. Laptops, a good
Yeah.
point, because there'll be a number of people with laptops.
And we are looking at some really cool learning about a lot of kind of neat portable power solutions. So there's gonna
Okay.
be some other opportunities like that as we get into the furniture.
Okay, very good.
So, yeah, we're looking for approval on the power plan as well.
Okay, may I have a motion, please, on 5B?
I have no idea if it's under or not. I got no clue, but I'll go ahead and move it. I'm
I
gonna
appreciate the move.
trust that
Yeah,
it's correct.
I'll second.
it's been moved and properly second. Any additional discussion? Again, all those in favor, sign of aye. Ayes have it, that motion approved. Item 5B, schematic design power plan, and we are looking forward to power.
That was the last action item. The
Yes.
furniture plan is just for your information, but we did want you to have this, so it was part of the materials that were posted online. Originally, we had budgeted to basically do furniture new everywhere, and so we're scaling that back. The thought is that we would do new furniture in the large conference room area to be able to do those tables and chairs for more flexible use. We are furnishing the two smaller conference rooms in front of house with existing furniture. So we have some larger kind of executive board tables and things like that that we'll be able to use. They're a little bit older, but condition-wise, they're in fine condition. There's no reason we can't just reuse them. We are planning to do new furniture for the workstations. So that's workstations starting here, kind of down in the bottom there, around the perimeter and up to workstation number 15. We're putting existing furniture that we already own and would move in offices 1 through 5, 6 through 9, and 10 through 13. So we're using our existing furniture and that's kind of the trade-off, you know, those that are being asked to transition to workstations. And that open seating will get new furniture first. And then we'll replace the furniture in the enclosed offices over time after we
Okay.
get in. And, you know, eventually the goal is to have a cohesive furniture plan.
Right.
But for the time being, we'll use what we have in those areas and try to be as efficient as possible. So that hopefully will bring down that furniture cost, and that'll be really our margin where we're trying to achieve the savings to offset the increases in other categories.
Okay.
So that's where we are with that. Over on the side over here with these carpet samples are the samples around kind of the color scheme, so certainly would welcome that. I mean, it's not like we can't change a paint color before we start painting, but that helps us to kind of start to think about all of the other decisions associated with it. So that's what's happening there. Katie, can you just kind of hit where we are, next steps, and the likelihood of, I think probably the next big thing for the committee will be to review the bid documents. So timeline wise, when would we be in a position to have the construction documents ready to go to bid?
Right, so the next steps, the design team will jump into construction documents, and we've got the MEP team on board, officially, so they're catching up with us. So we're estimating that the drawings will be complete by the end of May. We're shooting for the 25th. So at that time, we issue the drawings for landlord review. We'll also issue for permit at that time, and we also will issue the GC RFP. And we usually give the RFP or the GCs about 3 weeks to review the drawings and prepare their proposals. So we would like to be able to talk about the bids around mid-June. We were targeting like June 15th.
Okay.
To have numbers back.
Okay, that sounds good,
I
everybody?
believe.
Okay, well, thank you, Pat, we appreciate your being here. Thanks for voting too today. We
Thank
needed
you.
that, so we can stay on schedule. And under budget. And under budget. That's important.
No, yeah.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Hull.
That's all right, no problem. Hey, good, thank you. I'm glad to hear that we'll continue to monitor the schedule and staying on schedule and make sure that the executive committee and we, the finance committee, certainly are apprised of any changes almost immediately. Don't feel like you have to wait. You can call us at night, 24/7.
Thank you.
We're available around the clock for you. The main thing is to keep moving and keep on schedule and keep on budget. Thank you, appreciate that, so.
So I
thank you
would
much.
expect that we'll have a May finance committee meeting, just
Good
to your
deal.
point, to kind of keep up to date on things, and then we'll probably look to schedule the June meeting according to the review of the bid
Bids,
documents.
yeah,
So
good. We can
once
review
we have a
those.
little bit more information on that timeline, we'll look to schedule that at a different time than what's on your
Okay.
calendar right now.
Okay.
So we can keep the truck moving.
Good, good. And it'd be nice if you can apprise the other members not here, Mr. Allison, Mr. Peterson, just so I'll give them an update,
will.
just a phone call, or
Sure.
something would be great. A
Sure.
courtesy, if you would. Thank you so much. Any other items to be discussed?
That's all we have.
And if hearing no other business, we can adjourn, hopefully. Move we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved properly second, and we are adjourning. Thank you much. We appreciate everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Van Doren, for an excellent job on the budget presentation. Appreciate that. And of course, we look forward to a closer look on our finances and treasures and everything else. We look forward to that. And let me know if anything you need, anything we need to do. But appreciate that, the systems.
Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie. We appreciate your help.
Yep.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you,
Have a
everyone.
great,
Thank you.
have a great day.
Good afternoon.
Have a great, okay. All right, everybody, thank you again.